This is the Speak USA podcast. I'm Cliff Zentgraf, your host. Let's learn about our democracy and what we can do to protect it and make it stronger. I want to welcome Alan and Cindy to the Speak USA podcast. Thank you guys for being here so much.
Thank you for having us.
Are you all candidates? I've had a lot of political candidates on lately.
I'm not a candidate.
You're not running for anything?
I'm not running for anything.
You sure you don't want? You want to run for something? Anybody?
I'm a proud Democrat.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, that's good. That's good enough. Well, that is actually part of what makes today really cool, because our mission at Speak USA is to try to help people get engaged and to give them a voice. And so the fact you're sitting here, the fact that you are sitting at the table here today means that we are doing our mission. So thank you so much for both of you for being here. Alan, we're going to start by talking about your voting record.
Okay.
As an adult.
Yeah.
How's your voting record as an adult?
It could be better, but after Obama, I voted every year in the primaries, and that's about it. Unfortunately, I wasn't old enough to vote for Obama.
For the first time. But you voted 3 times. Is that correct? Or twice. You voted twice. You voted in the 2016 presidential election and the 2020 presidential election.
2020.
And then maybe 2024 again.
Yes.
Maybe it was 3. You know, everybody out there knows this. We talk beforehand, and so now we're doing the math again, Alan, aren't we?
Right, because 2016 would have been 14 years ago. I would have been 16. So.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe not then. So just the last 2 then. So how do you feel about voting today?
I think it's more important than ever today to vote. There's a lot going on right now. A lot of it I don't necessarily agree with. And I feel like the engagement needs to be higher, like overall. Young people, old people, but I feel like now is the time to really start voting.
Why do you think the engagement is low?
Well, so recently there's a term that's been thrown around, the lesser of 2 evils. Nobody really feels like they have somebody that encapsulates them completely. And so at this point, it's like, well, at this point, I'm just not going to vote. I don't care enough of what either people are doing. So they just end up not voting.
Yeah, that's interesting because the way our democracy works, we get 2 choices, right? Mm-hmm. Unless it's a clone of yourself, and even that might be a problem. I'm not sure I'd want to meet a clone of myself. I don't know if we'd get along or not.
Right.
Unless it's a clone of yourself, there's always going to be some different opinions that people have, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've had some inspiration, some influences on your life lately that have caused you to feel more strongly about the need to vote. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So as a straight white male, I feel like in my life has been pretty good, pretty easy. I've never felt out of place anywhere I've been. But more recently, the women in my life, I feel they've come under attack, basically. So whether it's reproductive rights mostly, right? So women are being told how to live their lives. And I don't think that's right. People, we're in America, land of the free. People should be able to live how they want for the most part. I just feel recently that's changed. So, the women in my life, my mom, my 2 sisters, they really pushed me to get more active in voting.
You want to introduce us to your mom?
Yeah, so this is my mom, Cindy
Hi.
Hacker.
Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Yeah, I just realized that we didn't even really talk about that, did we? Not too much. So, what did you have to do with this, somewhat newfound feeling of his about politics? How'd that happen?
I'm very excited, because he doesn't say a whole lot. But when he does talk, he's very well informed. He is paying attention. So I've always felt that it's the youth that are going to carry us through these times. So I'm very
Indeed.
proud of them.
Indeed. Let's rewind a little bit. So, we just kind of jumped in. Tell us a little more about yourselves. Cindy, I'll start with you. We talked a little bit about your background, how you landed in San Antonio. Go ahead.
Yes. I was raised in a military family. My dad retired here in 1974, and I had a career at one of the big corporations
30
here.
years
30
at a
years.
financial services institution.
Yes, 30 years, and I learned a lot. And after that, I worked at a private school and learned a lot about teachers and a whole new respect, because they raised my children, allowing me to have a career and have a retirement. So I'm grateful for that. And we live in a small town outside of San Antonio, and that's where we're currently living.
What did you do? We didn't talk about this earlier. What did you do at the school? What was your job?
And so, I sat at a desk for 30 years, so I was looking for something a little bit more engaging. And so I was the playground coordinator for 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was able to, plan the game activities. And so it was just a lot of fun,
You know what you're reminding me of? I taught Sunday school to 5-year-olds. That was that was many years ago when I taught Sunday school to 5-year-olds. But that can be a lot of fun, right? When you're not trying to corral them.
They're incredible. Children are incredible.
Yes, they are. So, Alan, over to you. Tell us just a little bit more about yourself.
So I've born and raised San Antonio. Like my mom said, currently we're out in Bernie. But I currently work in San Antonio as a teacher for middle school. So I teach, like I said, the kids English, and I feel like being a teacher, I do my best to create an environment that kids feel safe and that they can be the best they can be, because like my mom said, the kids are the future.
One of that things, networking, right? So many people know other people. One of our first guests, I think, was it our first guest? No, well, she was our first guest. It wasn't from our group. It was Irene Alvarez, who is a colleague of yours,
Yeah,
where you teach, right?
She works at the school that I work at, and she basically opened the door for me, right? So I went in as a volunteer to help with an after-school robotics program, and she liked what she saw, and she gave me that opportunity to step into a more on-hands role with the kids. So I started as a tutor for one of the classes there. It's an AVID class. It's a college prep course in middle school. Right. And then after that, they had some more opportunities, and continuing to like what they saw, they opened the door for me, and so now I'm a full-time teacher.
Amazing. And my day job is not in schools, but I serve schools in my day job, and so I think that's something that we have in common, is trying to help our younger generations grow up, help them grow up and be productive citizens. And like you said the word robotics a minute ago, so I know that. I work with a little bit of robotics technology programs and the like. But I will share with you all one thought that I have. I care a lot about STEM education, and I think it can be transformational, especially for the population of students that you serve and that we primarily serve in my day job. But I think maybe we've swung the pendulum of science and STEM a little bit too far at the expense of civics. I worry that our students do not understand the importance of government, why it matters, why being involved in the community matters. And I think we're witnessing that right now. I think we have a generation of young people who have grown up and don't really understand the way our democracy is supposed to work. Man, I wish we could fix that. How are we going to fix it? Let's go fix that, Alan.
Well, I think
you can come. You've got the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
So I think the first step is just opening the door, right? Getting them these ideas, and that's one of the things I like about robotics. I know that's still STEM, but we're hitting them at a young age, right? Because by the time it's high school, it could already be too late for some of them to really decide that that's what they want. I think giving these kids this opportunity early, the earlier the better, I think that's going to improve our chances. So as soon as possible, we really need to get them at least thinking about these ideas.
Well, and something that we can do with robotics or any technology-focused area is not only talk about how the technology works, but also talk about the application and how it can solve problems out in the real world.
Well, and that's what's cool about the robotics program is because one of the things we're tasked with at the competition is solving a real-world problem. So I know last year we had a technology-based theme, and so the kids had to come up with an idea. Or no, it's oceans. Sorry, but we had to solve a problem based on the oceans, and so they get thinking about, okay, here's what's going on. What can I do to make this better?
Did you know I showed up to one of those and gave them feedback?
Yes.
You knew? Did you know that? Okay.
Well, I know.
All right,
I know we had a lot of.
I
people
actually got
come
to
in.
see it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I say it's like, and then it's like you said, networking, right? So it's like one of the things that the judges look for is who did you talk to, right? Because while I don't think every kid will be or join politics, they need to know enough. But then it's like the experts, right? So we bring in experts and they give feedback, and then that's okay. So this is what he's been working on. How can we? What's a problem he has, and can we help him fix it?
Indeed. So let's move on to another topic that we talked about. You have a psychology degree, and I wanted to put that to work. So, I watch what's going on in our politics right now in the world, and I guess this is the partisan part of the show, I suppose. I see a guy who lies, who cheats, who bullies, who ignores all restraints, and then I see people following that person, and I see a party that is allowing it. We talked about or touched on this topic, Cindy, earlier. I see a party who's tolerating it, and I ask myself, what is the psychology of what is going on right here? How can this be possible? Hey, you're the guy with the psych degree at the table here. What in the world is going on?
I think there's two factors to this. One is that on the Democratic side, we are not as unified, right? And so let's say we have a centrist come in and they're like, well, there's really never a centrist running. It's usually a Democrat and a Republican. So they're like, okay, well, let me see what the Democrats are thinking, what they're doing, right? And so they come in, they talk to somebody, and then it's like, boom, here's the most extreme left that we want for our country. That's universal free healthcare, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but $25 minimum wage, which all these ideas I think are good and they can be helpful. But if you hit somebody with that right away, then they're like, oh, well, I don't know. I think that's a bit much. Maybe, they want to go baby steps. And then all of a sudden, if they feel attacked, it's like, oh, well, you don't believe enough. You need to be doing more. They feel attacked. And so that really pushes them out of the left side, the Democratic side. And then, they end up going to the Republican side. And then the word I think I'm going to use here is get indoctrinated, right? Because I feel like that's what it is. You're either fully bought in or you're not bought in at all. And then, so that's the second side, right? So the Republicans, they have their orders and they march, right? They're very unified in everything that they want, straight from the top down. And I know what you said, and I like what you said, how I think the current president is a bully, right? You do what he wants or you're out. And I think that's why. So I think Republicans feel, even the ones who aren't maybe 100% supportive, feel like they don't have a choice. Like they're going to lose what they do if they don't go along with what he wants.
There's any tool can be good to good use or bad use. Any tool. Unity is a tool. Mm-hmm. And right now, my observation is that tool is being put to use to lie, cheat, and bully and get away with it. Mm-hmm. And I really struggle with what I'm seeing going on here. And it's funny, I'm kind of breaking one of our rules right now. Well, we're allowed to talk about what we're against, but we want to talk about what we're for too. I'll tell you what I'm for: a guy who has the character of Joe Biden. Back, whether I'm not saying him or just somebody like him who has his character to lead and can find a way to take a variety of views inside of a big tent and have those views be something that everybody can look at and agree on, and then we'll have the policy debate when we get past it. Please go
Because
ahead.
I don't think we can fight back until, like you said, we need to be unified. Then we need to get into power, and then we can break down the minute details, right? Like right now, we need to have a strong singular message, which, I think you agreed, right? Take in different ideas, help people, help, create systems for the country. But right now, we're too busy infighting to strongly stand against the opposition.
Yeah, indeed. Cindy, I want to come back to you for a minute. I want to revisit the question, like, what did you do that has led to to these opinions? Or maybe you, I think maybe the sisters were also involved in this. And I know that you have also experienced some of, how do I put it? Some of these attitudes coming toward you in the place that you live. So let me just throw both of those on the table. Over to you.
Well, one of the stories, when we first moved to this small town, we loved it. And my 3 kids were at Whataburger, and we had a President Obama sticker on the car, and a white pickup truck pulled up behind him, revving their engine and swearing and cursing at my children. And the restaurant did call the police, and they came out. But I kept thinking, those are my 3 children in that vehicle, and they can't even go out and have a bumper sticker on their car that's going to offend someone and cause them to be accosted or even more serious. So that was eye-opening to me.
Yeah,
Very scary.
Indeed. And I think, what bothers me there, any time you have political parties of any number. In our case, there's pretty much 2 in the United States, right? And political parties of any number. You're always going to have a variety of views. You're going to have people who are far off on one side or the other. But I cannot tolerate that kind of behavior, and I don't care which side it comes from. Actually, one thing, Alan, when you and I were exchanging talking points, talking through what we were going to say, I was reminded again that for me, this is not liberal versus conservative. I have no problem sitting down with somebody who's got more conservative views than me and talking about the merits of the case, why we might go one direction or why we might go another. But I can't tolerate that kind of behavior. And that's what I see the Republican Party doing today. They have somehow tolerated this. I am reminded that after the 2020 election, Governor Abbott was one of the first people to invite the former president. And it's like 2 or 4 months, 6 months after, I don't remember. But I'm looking at that going, what in the world are you doing? This guy just, led an insurrection. And the rehabilitation of the party had already started, of that man had already started at that point. That really troubled me. Let's change the topic. Tell me about his sisters.
Well, they're awesome. And it's not so much what I taught them, it's what they taught me, and, engagement with their brother. And all along we thought that he wasn't really paying attention, but he was paying attention to everything.
Is this true?
And so,
I want to know.
And so,
Yeah.
It is true. Okay, he agrees.
So, but after my divorce, they had each other. They were very tight knit, and I think that is what helped them survive and kind of go through things and learn more and decide to be adults and become accountable. Some great traits that I think that they all have.
Well, and in our conversation before the podcast, you noted that accountability, and you feel like that accountability for trying to do the right thing as a citizen has found its way to Alan and his sisters, if I understood you correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, we clearly, I think, know right from wrong. We do. And we know what decency looks like, you know. So.
And what it doesn't look like.
And what it doesn't look
Yeah,
like.
indeed. We're not getting your sisters in trouble here, are we?
No.
Okay.
I think we're good. But then on the accountability thing, right? So I don't want to say I'm sad to say, but I'm a little sad to say in myself that I've only taken these small steps, right? I've only ever voted, presidential elections. And the biggest way to see change in your area is to vote local, right? And so that's, I think, my next couple of steps is to figure out how to get more involved on a smaller level. And so I know one of the things was, the Young Democrats of San Antonio. And so, I was able to sit in on one of their meetings recently, and it was super cool to see how one of the things we're bringing back here at the callbacks is that young people are trying to get more involved. And I think the local level is a really great place to get started.
Indeed. And that's how these things develop. If you look at what's happening federally and in the state, you go back 30, well, the state, there's been no statewide Democrat elected in 30 years. That's not the case at the federal level. But if you look at what's going on the federal level, you could trace that back 30 years. It was organizing efforts like the ones that are going on right now in the Democratic Party that ultimately led to change. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you just said that is so powerful, and this is a look in the camera moment for me, because this is our mission at Speak USA, is to try to help people who are watching what's going on in the world and saying, I've had enough of this, but don't know what to do. And so, my goodness, Alan, what an incredible example that you just shared with us. That, I mean, you made the call to go to the meeting to see what's going on. You made the call to sit at this table. What were you thinking when you did that? That's amazing.
I was thinking, it's like, I've had enough, basically, right? And like I said, my life personally has been pretty easy, and I know it's not like that for everyone. And that kind of ties back to why I started voting was for other people, right? It's like, I can make a change by doing these small things. And so I think that's just a great way to get started.
Oh, my goodness. You did, though, kind of just steal your own thunder at the end of the podcast, though.
Well, it's never too late. He invited me. So this is my first opportunity. And I'm happy to be, part of this. So I'm very excited.
Why don't you tell me what you told me in the car on the way here? What you did all by yourself.
About myself?
What you did by yourself. You went by yourself?
To the Women's March. That was my very first march in San
DC?
Antonio. In San Antonio.
Oh, in San Antonio.
I was so moved by it. And my daughters weren't available. And I said, I'm going no matter what. I made my posters and I showed up. And it was fabulous. It was fabulous. And I just love being with everyone.
I had never been to a protest before. And so, now in the last 6 months, I've been to many. Indeed. Thank you, Cindy, for that example. What amazing. Yeah. For making her say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, well, anyway, gosh, I almost wish we could wrap up, but we're going to revisit that now at the end because we're not done talking yet. We can't quit yet. Hey, let's talk about Gavin Newsom. I hear you like the guy.
Yeah. So, like I said, recently more involved, hearing things here and there about, different states. Really sad to hear that Texas did pass the redistricting. But one thing that I really liked about Gavin Newsom was he made a call to be more proactive, right? I think Democrats have been playing reactionary defense for too long. And when he said, well, if Texas is going to redistrict, so is California. And, these are two of the biggest states in the country, so they have a lot of pull during elections. So I think, we're not just, okay, this happened, what are we going to do about it? This is what we're doing. And I really like how he's taken that proactive approach.
Indeed. Although I will note, another topic we talked about before, but it's funny how I think about things when we're live. It's proactive, but it's also defensive in a way, right? Because it took Texas making this move. And to me, it's actually kind of sad because I like the way California had been doing districting. A citizens commission, basically. I don't know if I'm using quite the right terms, but a citizens commission. But guess what? That is not going to work at the national level at the moment. When you have other states who are not as committed to those values as you are, you play on the field you're dealt while you work to make it better.
And I think that's important because I feel like the field and the rules have changed. So with Trump, you know, he's done a lot of firsts as president, and not many of them good, right? First, you know, felony president. First president who's, I feel like I'll say weaponized the DOJ, right? He's telling the DOJ, this is what I want. These are the people I want you to look into. And I feel like he's taking way more liberties than any past president. And I feel like he's changed the rules of engagement.
You know, this is one of those democracy lessons that we want people to understand. We have a constitution, we have laws that are written down on pieces of paper. If you don't have norms and a commitment from people to follow those rules, then at the end of the day, they mean nothing. We are very fortunate to live in a country that has a 250-year history of these norms and institutions who are fighting back. You know, these things are being used as tools to fight back. If we had a weaker system and a weaker institution, we may be done already. And you are right. He has normalized things that, well, it's part of the reason why I've taken the step to do the things that I'm doing, because it you know, it's the kind of person that I would, like with my kids, I would point, or my kids are grown, but, you know, I would point and say, that's what you don't want to be. Don't be like that.
For sure.
Yet here we are.
Well, I think it's the behavior, because the rules, I mean, rules can be adjusted, things can be adapted, but it's the behavior that has changed, this lawlessness that has changed, and there's no regard for the rules. So I'm very concerned that these things are happening while, you know, straying from the Constitution, and everyone talks about the Constitution, but it's still happening. And I'm questioning, how are these things happening? You know, how are we going to stop it?
When you say lawlessness, do you have a particular example in mind?
Well, 34 felonies.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I think that, and sexual assault, and they don't believe it. His followers don't believe it. So if you know someone who is sexually assaulted, do you not believe them? If it's someone that you love, so when do you believe? What do you believe?
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of add on a little bit of that. I would say just like the decorum. Like, as somebody who's not, I wouldn't say terminally online, but I'm online, you know, fairly regularly. A lot of people, when, you know, because I said the lesser of two evils earlier, a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, I voted Trump because I think he's a funny guy, right? It's like, okay, but are we voting for the president or for best comedian, right? It's like, that's, and I don't want to play the, you know, two sides, what about, you know, but if any, you know, Democratic president acted the way that he was acting, there would be uproar from the Republican side, like on a crazy level, I think. So I just think like he's not fit to run the country, I think.
We have a president who's a comedian. Ukraine has a comedian who is an incredible president. I never thought about that before, but my goodness, it's true. You know, a word about Ukraine for a minute. I feel like it's the front line of defending democracy around the world right now. And what in the world are we doing? Not just supporting them all out. And boy, we could go off on that topic, but we didn't talk about that topic when we prepared. Let's talk about one last thing before we kind of head toward wrap up. We talked about the age factor, and if I'm going to make light of this here. You basically said nobody my age should be running.
Well,
Mom's laughing down there.
I'm looking away.
Well, I don't want to say necessarily your age so much, but it's like I feel like we're at a point in history where it's time to have a changing of the guards, basically, right? So I'm 30, I'm a teacher, and I make, I would say, a decent 5-figure salary at my job. But, the average age of a congressperson is, 57 to 64, right? In that range. And they're making a very healthy 6-figure salary. So it's like, as an old person who's been doing that for so long, what do they know about my struggles, right? And I did say, my life has been pretty easy, but I still have struggles that I feel like they just can't connect to. Especially, the pull them up by their bootstraps, whatever. It's like people thrive when they're not trying to make sure their life is in one piece. They need to have a solid foundation before they can really excel and change the world.
So you're looking for some youthful folks.
Yeah.
To get involved, to declare as candidates.
Yeah. And well,
who can relate to us.
Yeah. And so this is, I just thought this was funny personally. So Beto O'Rourke loves swear words. And young people love swear words as much as you guys think that's, not professional or whatever. But I think that's the kind of bridge that we need. And then, you have people like AOC, she's 35. She worked as a bartender. I worked at, Subway for like 8 years before I found my teaching job, or it found me. And so it's just like, she can kind of recognize that struggle more so. And I think, these younger people, they really need to connect. And I feel like it's hard for, a 60-year-old, also majority white people to figure out what the young people want.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between understanding it intellectually, which I think we all do, mm-hmm. and living it. The social sciences, I think, magic term for this is lived experience, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have that lived experience. And so anyway, all right. Well, I can see one person at the table who fits your qualifications age-wise anyway to vote. So, all right. Well, I think let's see, kind of a little bit of a wrap up here. I think we all agree we need more offense. Mm-hmm. We need to be on offense. We need to be unified within whatever differences we have. I like the fact, by the way, that the Democratic Party has a variety of views. We got to figure out how to use that to our advantage, not to our disadvantage. And the way it's been. I
would say on that, I feel their hearts are in the right place, right? They want that $25 because they want, the local McDonald's employee to not, get sick one day and then just like his life is over from a doctor bill, right? And I think that makes sense. I think that's fine. They just need to find a middle ground where they can, I think, agree, and then they can push for that singular ideal.
Yeah, indeed. And so we're all working together on that. I want to come to my standard wrap-up question, and this is where we kind of stole our thunder earlier, but we're going to revisit it. Remind everyone your examples for how you first got involved. What's the first thing you did, Cindy? You went to
the Women's March.
The Women's March.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that? What was that? What was it like? How many people were there?
There was a few hundred people there. It was very organized. I was a little bit alarmed when I saw the yellow vests, and so like they were protecting us, and I thought that was interesting. I never thought that there would be risk involved, and just showing up and supporting your beliefs.
Yeah, exercising
so
that
surprised me.
Right.
That was my first time.
Yeah. Exercise your First Amendment right.
And the fact that you felt you needed protection doing that also, I feel like, is an alarming thing for our country.
Yeah, there's a lot of efforts right now to chill. My last guest, by the way, was Josh Collins. He is part of an organization called Revision News. He is working real hard to report the facts of local politics. And, I know frankly, part of the reason I'm doing this is because I feel like people are bullying me not to say what I want to say. Mm-hmm. And nope, not going to happen. You know, so anyway, thank you for that example. And your example, Alan, was going to the Young Democrats meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That was your number one?
Yeah, because like I said, I've only ever voted in, major presidential elections. But ultimately, if you want to see change, you got to start local. And that's the best way you're going to see change in your life.
Is to do that in local politics.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are all active on that front now. Thank you guys for joining today.
Thank you.
Before I do my normal wrap up, I want to tell everyone, if you've been watching this on Podbean, we are now on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Podbean. Let me say that again. The Speak USA podcast can now be found on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, or on the platform that, if you've been watching for a while, that platform is Podbean. So we're thrilled to have more distribution. Alan, Cindy, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to ask everyone, what did you learn today about our democracy? What can you do to help protect it? How can you get engaged? I want to remind everyone, ask, plead that you go out and speak for the USA. Thank you all again.
Thank you.